Welcome to the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Hey, Triple P Nation, welcome back to the podcast. You know, this week we're going to be talking about endocrine disruptors. What? Yeah, I know. A lot of you haven't heard of them before. How do I know this? Because I spoke at a wellness conference this past weekend, and if you've been around the last month or so, I did a 3-part series on the current state of health in America. And, you know, I shared a lot of statistics about where we are, how we got here, how the rapid decline in overall human health performance is sliding so quickly, and the underlying causes is really at the root of all the chronic disease that we're experiencing. And you know, it's heavy material. It's not happy. It's not empowering. You know, it's not like a mindset episode, or if I have an incredible guest who's giving incredible content about how, you know, improve your fitness or to improve your business, or inspired stories of how they've overcome loss or their own personal challenges. This is raw and it's real, but it's really important, and it's something that needs to be addressed because it's the issue of our time. And it's an issue in which that's not a political issue. It's not right, left, or center. It affects every human being on the planet, in particular, those here in the United States. Why? Because statistically, it's showing that the health in our country is worse than anywhere in the world, which is absolutely unfathomable when you consider how much money we spend per year. 4.5 trillion with a T per year. And by every metric, every standard, the health is declining very rapidly. And it has been for particularly the last 20, 25 years. And so I did this episode, or this 3-part series, to bring to light for you so you can know why things are the way they are, and to give you some real data to support this. Again, this is not my opinion. This is what the research is showing. Because there is a major move in this country to bring these issues to light. Fortunately, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been confirmed as the Director of Health and Human Services. Why is that important? Because he's on your side. Set aside what you think about him. Again, set aside the political stuff, right? Just try to step back and be a little bit objective for a moment here or two. Whether you agree with him on his vaccine positions or not, that's debatable. Not for me, it isn't, because I've done the research. A lot of it I share with you here on this show. But when he's talking about the crisis in our healthcare system, our sick care system, the rapid decline of health of our children, the obesity rates, the cancer rates, the heart disease rates, this is real. This is affecting everybody in our country here right now. So if it's not you, it's 8 out of 10 people. So, you know, your network is filled with people who are suffering from these conditions. And I know you care for them. I know you love them. No one wants to see anyone sick and suffer, to be hospitalized, to be on medications for the rest of their life, to have their life cut short by these chronic illnesses, or worse yet, by sudden cardiac events, which are happening rapidly now. And so I understand this topic is not joyful. It's not, you know, this is not a happy place in a sense, you know, with so many of the other topics that we talk about. But it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be discussed intellectually and honestly, and it needs to be shared. It needs to be furthered. This dialogue cannot be just held amongst a few professionals who have a passion for this. It has to become the driving force that's going to change the sick care model in this country. If you remember, I said, right, $4.5 trillion a year is spent on our sick care system, and only 3% is spent on preventative care. Is it any wonder why we have so much sickness and disease? Does it make sense to worry, or to only focus on your vehicle when it's blowing out black smoke, or if you're blowing a ring, or you've got an oil leak? Or does it make sense to maintain that vehicle that you've made that investment in so it performs at a high level for a long period of time? Well, if we treat our vehicles this way, shouldn't we be treating ourselves this way? And the fact is, we can't treat ourselves this way if we don't know what we don't know. And that's my whole theme with this whole series that I've done. And I'm going to add to that today because, as I mentioned, I spoke at a wellness conference this past weekend, which was it was fun. I enjoyed it and had great audience. And it was interesting. I had two very different responses from attendees. One came up and said it was the most inspiring health presentation she had ever heard, a nursing student. And she's decided that she's not going to go into nursing. She wants to go into this field, which was very exciting. And she said she got so much out of it that she was going to start applying some of the things that I had talked about. And I had handouts for them, QR codes. They downloaded the information, so on and so forth, because I like to give that information so they're listening rather than writing notes. And she was really, really moved by that to start to make some changes in her own life. And this was a young, fairly healthy looking individual. And then I had an older gal who came up to me and she said, "Thank you for coming to do this, but I got to tell you, I feel awful." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "I realize I'm doing so many things wrong." And I want to say, I said this in my presentation. This is not about blame. This is not to say, "Hey, you're a bad person. You've been doing these things," or "You're not intelligent. You don't know this stuff. You're doing this stuff that's harming yourself and your family." This is not about assigning blame to you or to anybody else. This is merely about empowering you with the knowledge so you don't have to suffer the fate of so many people who are suffering needlessly. And that's the point. That's the point. In so many cases, guys, this is needless suffering. And what I mean by that is we are not a victim of our genetics. Our genes have not changed over 50,000 years. Well, wait a second. If our genes haven't changed, but the rate of sickness and disease has exploded in the last 20 to 25 years, why? If it's not a genetic condition. In other words, you're not a victim of your genes. This is environmental. This is lifestyle. And the good news about that is that can change. With the choices we make and the knowledge that we gain, we can stop and reverse these processes. And so made it my mission this year is to really bring these issues to light so you can understand and you can begin to own this material. You don't have to be an expert, but own this material so you can start to make incremental changes into your life. So think of it in this terms. I mentioned, I think it was on the first show of the 3-part series, I said, think about where you are on a scale of 0 to 10 when it comes to your health, right? 10 is, you've got abundant energy. You sleep, 8, 9 hours a night, but quality sleep. You get restful recovery sleep. You eat a really pure, pristine diet. In other words, it walked on the earth. It grew from the earth. It's free of pesticides. You don't consume alcohol. You don't smoke. Yeah, I know I'm talking about the perfect human being. You know what I mean? Because I don't do all those things all the time. I do them most of the time, but not all of the time. You exercise. At least you're moving every single day, if not exercising 5 to 6 times a week. And you work on your mental fitness and your mental health, and you take breaks to relax your mind, clear your mind, meditate, pray, whatever it is to de-stress yourself. So that person would be at 10, and a 1 would be literally someone on their deathbed and the last rites have been given. So when you think of the scale, where would you put yourself on that scale? So let's just say you're a 5, right? Okay. It's not so much where you score yourself, but the question becomes, are the lifestyle choices that you're making, is it moving you up the scale towards optimal health and wellness, or are your choices moving you towards that guy or gal on the deathbed with last rites? Because the choices you make will determine your fate. The choices you make will determine your quality of life. The choices you make will determine how much of your wealth that you accumulate in life will be spent on the last year of your life just trying to get well or to preserve your life for another year or two. because the number one reason for bankruptcy in the United States is due to health costs. So it's a real issue. It's a ticking time bomb, not only from a financial aspect, because $1 in $5 each year in this country is spent on healthcare. So it's a financial time bomb, and it's a time bomb as it relates to human health. So in the conversation that I had with the audience, I talked about these endocrine disruptors, and you would think I was, speaking, Japanese. Most of these people had never heard of this before. So I realized sometimes I'm in my own echo chamber, guys, right? I talk to people who are passionate about this information, and we're using this terminology like everyone knows and understands what it is. And I had to step back and go, you know what? Most people don't. And I talked about a little bit over the 3-part series about endocrine disruptors, but I don't know if I really dived into it, what they are and how they're affecting our health, right? We talked about metabolic syndrome and what it is and how to make some of the changes. We talked about the seed oils. So now I want to talk about endocrine disruptors, and then I'm going to follow that up in the next week or two on hormone replacement therapy and the benefits of hormone replacement therapy. I also told you I'm going to talk about peptides, which is really at the forefront of the next evolution in health and wellness is peptide therapy. Again, I'm not going to get specific here today. So these are the things you have to look for moving forward as we really begin to break these down into little buckets. Because if we look at each of the buckets, if we look at the overall lifestyle choices, if we look at our nutrition, if we look at our diet, if we look at our physical activity, if we look at the things that we purchase, our environment, then we can start to be strategic in picking things off to eliminate or add that is going to radically change our overall health, our cellular health, our physiology, our quality of life, and our quantity of life. So this week, our primary focus is on endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. Now, what they are substances that interfere with your body's endocrine system, which regulates your hormones, and they are responsible for growth. They're responsible for your metabolism. Remember, metabolic syndrome, reproduction, your mood, your cognitive function, and countless other vital functions that go on within your body. Now, these EDC chemicals often mimic, block, or alter your hormone production and your hormone signaling, which leads to various health effects. So how do these EDCs affect your hormones? So the first we had mentioned was mimicking hormones. So some EDCs act like natural hormones, like your estrogen or your testosterone, and they trick your body into responding as if the hormone is present in a higher amount. The second kind is the blocking hormones, and they prevent the natural hormones from binding to the receptors, right? If you remember, I laid it out as you have a cell, and outside the cell, they're kind of like little garage doors. They're called receptors. And so when these chemicals latch onto the cell membrane, they kind of knock on the door opens and allows that, chemical, whether it being testosterone or insulin, into the cell and do its thing. But this blocks that from occurring. The third type is what we call altering hormone production and altering metabolism as well too. So these EDCs can increase or decrease hormone production or affect how hormones are broken down into the body. So those are the three things. They mimic, they block, or they alter. So none of those three are really advantageous for you. So the impact it has, particularly for women, is it creates imbalances for your estrogen. So how does that affect you? Well, it's going to affect your menstrual cycles. It's going to make them irregular. If you're somebody who struggles irregular menstrual cycles, it's possible these EDCs are a contributing factor. If you experience PMS, right? Big time contributor for that. And especially we're seeing now early puberty in young girls. As young girls as 7 now are starting puberty, which is crazy. It's because of all these phytoestrogens that are in our environment they're consuming. So the body's being signaled to start the puberty process much earlier than previously before in these young girls. Also for women, it affects fertility issues. So the more EDCs in our environment, it increases the risk of miscarriages. It also reduces the egg quality, right? Again, leading to miscarriages, and then the disruption of ovulation. Also, it also increases the risk of breast cancer and endometriosis, which also have increased significantly over the last couple of decades. Now, for you guys, you're not out of the woods either. For guys, it reduces our testosterone levels, so it lowers our libido. It increases the infertility issues, chronic fatigue, decreased muscle mass. If you remember, one of the statistics I mentioned was overall strength in men have decreased 40% over the last 30 years because we're not producing as much muscle as we did previously. It's a significant issue. It's not just, hey, I got muscles, look at me, I look fit. No, it's more than that. We know that less lean muscle as we age increases mortality rate. So I don't think oftentimes we make the correlation between lean muscle health and longevity. So these are issues. Also for guys, testicular dysfunction. So we know sperm counts are down precipitously because testosterone levels are down 50% in the last 20 years. So it's not just a count, it's the motility, right? Its ability to swim upstream. If you get my drift or current. So, and again, no laughing matter, but I mentioned in 2030, just 5 years from now, if this doesn't turn around, we're not even going to be at replacement birth rates in this country. In other words, we're going to be dying off faster than we're replacing. And that's an issue on so many economic levels, not the least of which is the preservation of humankind. So big, big, big issues going on here. And then the other one, guys, is these EDCs increases our risk of prostate cancer, which is the number one cancer killer for guys. So lots of stuff happening here. So some of the common sources of these hormone disruptors, again, remember, these are chemicals that are widespread and have really been around for decades. Although the interesting thing is the awareness to these chemicals have only been brought to the forefront, I'd say really in the last 10 to 15 years, and certainly more so in the last 3 to 5 years. So here are some of the everyday sources of these EDCs. Remember, endocrine disrupting chemicals. So the first one being plastics, BPA, phthalates, which are found in your food containers, your packaging, plastic water bottles, not just what you buy in the store, but your shaker bottles, because the plastic leaches, especially every time you put it in the dishwasher, it heats it up, and those chemicals tend to leach into the liquids. So looking at your food packaging, and it's difficult because it's pervasive, but I'm going to give you some suggestions how to turn some of this stuff around. So stay tuned, right? This is not all bad news. We're going to give you some good things that you can do to mitigate some of the risks here. Another source is personal care products, right? Your skin lotions, your soaps, your shampoos, your makeup, your fragrances, toothpaste. It's in just about everything. So what we find in those products are parabens, synthetic fragrances that they put in there to make them smell good. And then also sunscreens. Oxybenzone is a cancer-causing agent that we know, which is an endocrine disruptor. So I did an episode on sunscreens a really long time ago, probably 3 years or more. I'm going to update and do a new one here probably in the springtime, because there's better products out there without all the chemicals, the endocrine disrupting chemicals and the cancer-causing agents, because there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about sunscreen. I will cover that in a future episode. Another source is household products. So you probably don't know, or maybe you do know, is that a lot of your clothes, a lot of your furniture and your carpet has what's called flame retardants. And there's some serious chemicals in those products. Your non-stick cookware, right? Your PFOAs, all cleaning products have these products in it, or EDCs in it as well too. Another source is pesticides and herbicides. I cover this a little bit on the metabolic syndrome episode. So that'd be like atrazine, glycophosphate, DDT, which is still persistent in some environments, even though it's been banned. So, they say it's no longer in use, but it's still being used in certain places. And then the final source is industrial chemicals, where we find PCBs and dioxins. And again, though banned, they still persist in our environment. What does that mean? Is that it takes forever for these things to break down their half-life, so they remain in the soil, they remain in the water, they remain in the air as well too. We talked about microplastics. So let me briefly touch on PCBs. They are man-made organic chemicals. They started using these back in the 20s until they were banned in the late 70s. And they were used in electrical equipment like transformers and capacitors, hydraulic systems, even in paint and sealants. The impacts we know is they disrupt the thyroid function metabolism, linked to cancer, linked to brain development, and cause neural behavioral issues. They also alter reproductive hormones and affect fertility. So PFOAs, which are basically known as forever chemicals, these forever chemicals also have pretty significant health effects. Um, Again, the primary one we find is nonstick cookware like Teflon. We finally got rid of all our nonstick cookware a few years ago. We found this company called Caraway, and they're porcelain pans, and we replaced all of them. We keep adding to it. Now, it's an incredible cookware. It's safe. It's easy to clean. It's expensive. Legitimately, it's expensive. But getting these nonstick cookwares out is really important. We also find these PFOAs in clothing. We find it in carpets. And then up until really the early 20 teens, it was still in food packaging. So again, despite the phase out, they are still persistent in our environment, and they're going to be for decades. So the impacts of these BPCs and POFAs, again, right? Thyroid, kidney, and testicular cancer actually increases your cholesterol level and causes liver damage. It downregulates your immune response. And here's the big one. These chemicals affect fetal development and birth outcomes. So we want to make sure we avoid the nonstick cookware, as I mentioned. Look at your food wrappings. Make sure you're drinking clean water, because we're finding these chemicals in municipal water supply. You can you can check with your local water treatment facility in your community. They do annual tests, and they can tell you everything that's in the water. In our community here, roughly, it was about 5 years ago, it was on the front page of the newspaper here. They found 62 pharmaceuticals besides all these chemicals that I was talking about in our drinking supply. Because, you go to the bathroom, it gets flushed, that water treatment, and then the whole cycle turns back around. So, are they new? Here's a question. Are they new? No. Right? We know these EDCs have been around for a really long time. Regulations have improved, but they're going to be persistent in our environment. The contamination is still going to be there. And here's the thing, there's new synthetic chemicals that they're coming out now with. We don't even know what risk that they're going to pose. So the question is then, how do we avoid these hormone disruptors? Because that's the key. All right. We kind of understand what they are now. We understand where, they're being used. The question is, how do we avoid them? And the main thing when it comes to your food source is you got to look at and start reducing your plastic use, right? Start using glass containers. Again, I don't know about you, back in the day before I knew all this, you had a bunch of plastic containers, which you would take and put in the microwave and heat them up or store them in there. Oh my God, talk about just a toxic sludge. So we don't do that anymore. All our storage material is glass containers, which keeps the food pure. So you want to make sure that you stay away that as much as you can. Also, Avoid microwaving food in plastic, as I just mentioned. Really bad news. Another thing you can do is choose safe personal products. So that's like using fragrance-free and paraben-free and phthalate-free options. They're available. I'm not going to give you specific brands, but they're available out there. So looking at your labels, and they will tell you if they're fragrance-free, paraben, or phthalate-free. If they don't say it, then you'll look in the back and you'll see them there. Basically, what you're doing, you're just slathering yourself with this stuff. The skin is your biggest organ, and that just leaches right directly into your bloodstream. You also want to check products using apps like what's called EWG, Healthy Living, or Think Dirty. It's a pretty interesting app, and it'll tell you what's in those products. You just scan them. It's a really, really helpful app. Another way to avoid these disruptors is really looking at your diet, right? Cleaning it up. Buy organic when possible. Buy local when possible. So you reduce your exposure to pesticides and these chemicals that are used now in farming and big ag. Also avoid processed foods. Again, my simple rule of thumb: box, bag, or can. If it's a box, bag, or can, it's devoid of nutrients. It's highly toxic. Remember, there's over 10,000 chemicals that are used in our food source here in the United States, which are highly addictive. They're called they're called excitotoxins. That means that they're specifically designed for your brain to crave them, just like nicotine, just like um, cocaine. Yeah, highly, highly addictive. And these are found in many of the preservatives. And the interesting thing is that the same food companies in Europe that are making our food are making their food, and they only use 10, not 10,000. So they are way tighter with their foods. By the way, their rate of chronic disease, metabolic syndrome, obesity, cardiovascular disease, cancer, significantly lower here than here in the United States. Think there's a link? I don't think you have to be a rocket science to put those two together and know that there's a link. Another thing that you can think of with these hormone disruptors is look at your household changes, right? Start using natural cleaning products. The easiest thing to use is vinegar, baking soda, and essential oils. You can mix it up in a spray bottle, shake it up. It's just as effective and very safe for you and your environment. Another thing you do is just clean more. Vacuuming up the dust regularly helps minimize the chemical-laden dust that accumulates from you sitting on the carpet. You see if the sun's out and shining in your room, you see the dust flying all over the place. You walk on the carpet, you kick up the dust, you kick up the fibers. So the more you can continually remove that from your environment, the less you're breathing that in, the less it's getting on your skin. And then use water filters. Again, we talked about this maybe 2 years ago. I talked about water filtration and the importance of it. I give you that example of the 62 pharmaceuticals in our drinking water. We've been using reverse osmosis in our home for 20 years or more now for our drinking water. You can buy a whole home system, even for your showers as well too. Because if you're using, let's say, drinking water for reverse osmosis, but you don't have it on your shower, when that shower is on and hot water's coming out, you're getting the vapors from the fluoride and all the other chemicals that is in that water. And again, I know you're thinking, "Oh my God, it's just overwhelming." I get it. I totally get it. But you need to see how pervasive this stuff is and how we have to be tactical to protect our health for ourselves and our family, because no one else is going to do it. No one's coming for you. No one's going to show you how to do this and say, "Hey, you need to do this, this, that, and the other thing." The only one who's going to come save you is you. So when thinking of all this stuff, guys, I just want to give you some simple tactical strategies that if you're someone, and I know you're someone who cares about your health and well-being, or you wouldn't be listening to this show, because otherwise you would have checked out a long time ago. You're like, "I can't listen to this. This guy's crazy." So I know this stuff is important to you. And so therefore, if you have the tools and if you've got the information, you could start to look at every aspect of your environment, of your life, of your choices, and start to be more strategic in the decisions you make as it relates to your health. Because your health is your responsibility. It's no one else's. It's not your doctor's. I'm sure they're great people and they love you and they want to see you be well. Of course they do. No question about it. But when they're mandated to take 15 minutes max with a patient, they don't have a whole lot of time to go over this information. And I'm already on part 4 of this series. I said it was going to be 3. Part 4 is going to probably wind up being 8 parts of it. And the fact is, they can't sit down and go through this with you, even if they know it. And if you recall, I told you most of them don't get any nutritional education at all. And the ones that do, it's less than 20 hours. So it's just not in their wheelhouse. So let's talk about treatments to reverse the effects of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, because there are, and this is the great news. If you are struggling right now, if you are struggling with low energy, chronic brain fog, fatigue, mood swings, low libido, right? If you exercise, you're not seeing any results, you plateau, even you're working your butt and you're eating fairly well, right? That's an indication. All those signs are indication. If you're experiencing fertility issues, if you're experiencing cognitive issues, all these are signs. So here's some of the things that you can do. The first and the easiest, as I mentioned, is lifestyle changes. So think about detoxification, right? We want to detoxify, get these things out of our system. So there's a lot of strategies to do that. There is liver detoxes. There is gut detoxes. There is saunas to detoxify the heavy metals and all those things out of your system through your lymphatic system, right? Cold plunging. There's lots of things that you can do. So every year I do a liver detox and I do a gut restoration program, because I'm not immune to this, not any different than you are. And the interesting thing is, if you're somebody who gets regular blood work, you may see it on your blood work, particularly with your liver enzymes. They may be elevated because your liver is toxified, right? So there's ways to detoxify that, and it's not very difficult, and it doesn't take a terrible amount of time. You just got to get with the right provider who knows how to do that, who can make the appropriate recommendations. And the same thing with your gut. We also know that exercise, right? Exercise is great for everything, right? So sweating, that's why saunas are so good, is amazing for helping you to eliminate the toxins. So sweat as often as you can. So I know there are people who don't like to sweat, but sweat's good. Sweat is really good. And then there's, the next level, which is more interventional. So whether that is hormone replacement, nutrition, whatever it might be. We get patients come in all the time. And most of them come in for these specific types of, signs and symptoms that I just reviewed with you in just a minute ago. And they say, well, I need hormone replacement. Well, like, maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? Well, I need this supplement, or I need this, or I need that. I'm like, you know what we need to do, so we know, based on your unique physiology and your findings, what's specific to you, so we can make an intelligent assessment and then make the appropriate recommendations. They may very well need hormone replacement. They may well need detoxification. They may need nutritional support, or they may need none of it. But we don't guess, because that's not a smart scientific approach to your health. So whether it's at Revitalizing Health and Hormones or any other clinic in your location, right, who has this mindset of looking at you globally and not as, a digestive system or a liver or a thyroid, because as you know by now, it's an intricate, very complex system that works tandem. And so we've got to look at it vitalistically, whole, as opposed to mechanistically, parts. And to me, that's where the medical system has gone off and fails, right? You've got an endocrine doc, you got a kidney doc, you've got digestion, you've got cardiovascular, you got orthopedic, and no one knows what anything else is doing. We just look at the body as parts. That's not how we're made. And so a vitalistic provider looks at the entire body, right? Mind, body, and assesses it globally to truly understand what's necessary and what's needed. It's tactical, it's strategic, and it's scientific. You may need stress management. We get people coming in all the time. Their cortisol levels are through the roof, which is going to downregulate their testosterone. So if we just get their cortisol levels right, give them, really effective stress management techniques, all of a sudden what happens is we start to see re-regulation in their physiology. So whether it's yoga or meditation or prayer, whatever it might be, we've got to look at that as well too, because the mind alters and affects their physiology. So look at it in two ways, right? Lifestyle and intervention. Do the lifestyle changes first. If you're not seeing significant changes, then look at more advanced intervention. Find a highly qualified health and wellness doc, naturopath, again, a clinic like Revitalizing Health and Hormones, uh, and go in and get assessed properly. It's interesting. Oftentimes we get people come in and say, I talked to my doctor and I wanted to get my hormones tested and they won't do it. And this is something we hear all the time. And the reason is primarily is if they test your hormones, they don't know specifically what to do based on what the findings are, unless there is some sort of um, pathology occurring. So for the general individual, let's say the woman at 45 or 55 who's perimenopausal or postmenopausal or menopausal, and her testosterone levels are in the tank, right? They're going to just go, well, it's a normal part of aging. So they're not going to order it. And primarily, they're not going to order it because the insurance company is not going to pay for it. Again, your health is your responsibility. So take that responsibility seriously, because when you get this stuff right, and it's so incredible when people come in and are like, I never ever imagined I could feel like this again. I feel like my old self. I feel vitalistic. I feel hopeful. I feel excited for the future. I'm excited to, pursue these goals that I had. I lost my ambition. See that all the time. It's the coolest thing. It really is. So, because to take this to another level, we know that these disruptors are affecting our mood and cognitive function. I really want to, take a minute here to discuss this, because this is really big. So these endocrine disruptors are significantly affecting brain function and your mood, because we know these hormones are playing a crucial role in brain development. So for young people, of course, right? And neurotransmission regulation. So we've seen an explosion in depression and anxiety over the last 10 years. I mean, an absolute explosion. So it's fair to say that these EDCs are playing a significant role in this, significant elevation in anxiety and depression. So again, oftentimes when we're feeling like this, we go in, we get checked, and we're recommended to go on an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication, whatever it might be. It's not that they're really depressed, but they're feeling these depressive symptoms, this feeling of anxiety, of panic attacks, so on and so forth, because their physiology's off. Because there's a dysregulation in their hormones, unable to signal to your cells and not getting the right hormones into your cells that play a crucial role in mood stability. So we know the disruption in your hormonal balance is going to lead to cognitive issues, emotional, behavioral. Here, it's not just it's not just us guys, it's not just adults. It's also for kids as well too. Okay? And that's big. Why? Because what we're finding is neurodevelopment effects, especially in children, exposure to a lot of these chemicals, especially during pregnancy or early in life, will impair brain development. And it affects IQ development, attention span, and memory. Links have been found between certain endocrine disruptors in ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, and learning disabilities. So we know the significant role that this is playing in adults. And now we're seeing the impact it's having on our kids. And again, I'm a statistics guy. Just 20 years ago, autism was basically 1 in 10,000 kids. Now it's 1 in 35. Okay, our genes haven't changed in 50,000 years. What has? Our environment. Our environment. Here's the critical thing. When you get this right for kids, when you clean up their internal ecosystem, so many of these things, if not completely resolved, just normalize. You get your normal kid back, right? They're able to focus. They get off these spectrum disorders. They become hopeful and excited about the future because you do. Okay, so another way these EDCs affect your brain function is through inflammation and oxidative stress. So these disruptors increase your brain inflammation, which causes oxidative stress to your cells, your neurons in your brain, which contribute to fatigue, brain fog, cognitive decline, and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, so on and so forth. So all start connecting all the dots here. It's all interconnected. So we also know these endocrine disruptors are affecting neurotransmission. Your estrogen, testosterone, and thyroid hormones influence neurotransmission, which causes secretion of serotonin and dopamine and GABA, right? These are the brain's primary neuroinhibitor transmitters, the GABA ones, that play a crucial role in calming the nervous system. So think of it as your brain's natural brake pedal. And that promotes relaxation, reduces stress, and helps you maintain emotional balance. So it's crazy, right? We just talked about anxiety and depression. So if your GABA levels are being affected due to these EDCs, right, your brain's ability to shut down and just feel a sense of calmness completely is destroyed. So these EDCs mimic or block these hormones. And then that's how you get the mood swings and the anxiety and depression, so on and so forth. We also know that there's an axis of dysregulation. So what does that mean? It interferes with your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which leads to increased cortisol levels. That's the stress hormone. So adrenaline and cortisol is what's produced during the stress response. So when you're in fight or flight, right, those hormones are critical for self-preservation. So it increases your blood pressure, your heart rate. If you got to run, right, fight or run, flight. So you're prepared and gives you the best chance for survival. But it's not designed to be that way chronically. What I mean chronically, like all the time. So fight or flight is supposed to be uh, spontaneous and instant, short burst, minute, 2, 3, get you out of that environment, good to go. And then your parasympathetic takes over and you're in the relax and digest situation. But because of our environment, because of these EDCs, we're in the chronic fight or flight stress levels, which it leads us to increased cortisol levels chronically. So this leads to irritability, right? Again, more mood issues, right? And a lack of resiliency. So how's this affecting in females? Well, we just talked about it. Worse PMS, mood swings, guys, irritability, depression, brain fog, concentration, kids, ADD, ADHD, behavioral issues, early puberty. So some of the same chemicals that affect the brain, right? The endocrine disrupting chemicals or the phthalates, the dioxins, the pesticides, and the heavy metals. So it's the same thing. So as the suggestions I gave to you earlier, how to mitigate your environment, how to avoid some of these things are in play with your brain just as well. Now, there are some nutritional support products that helps deal with this as well too. But let me say to you specifically, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm not recommending these for you. I'm simply letting you know what typically is used um, nutritionally with people in these types of conditions. Make sure you check with your healthcare provider, get properly assessed and evaluated before you take any of these supplements. But the ones that are primarily used are omega-3 fatty acids that support brain health, magnesium, your B vitamins, particularly methylated B vitamins, and of course, vitamin D, D3, and K2. And then, of course, pay attention to your lifestyle habits, right? Assess them. Where do you need to change? What can you improve? And then finally, again, if these chronic brain issues, these deficiencies that you're noticing are not improving with natural changes, go get checked out for sure. Go get checked out. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up today our episode on endocrine disruptors. We covered, what is really at the root cause, where are these occurring in our environment, how they're affecting our bodies, how they're affecting our physiology, and ways to mitigate it. So my suggestion is, if you get a chance, go back and listen, take some notes, and start to lay out some suggestions for yourself of where you can start making some changes. In fact, what I might suggest you do is listen to this together as a family and put up a hit list of things that you want to begin to eliminate and add together as a family. Educate your kids about this, educate your parents about this, because together, right, if you're doing this as a family unit, it's way more fun. Everyone understands, and everyone understands the benefits of making these changes because you love each other. You want grandma and grandpa to be around a long time, mom and dad to be around a long time, to be able to enjoy each other, to enjoy times together, create more memories. So if you are strategic and put these steps into place, the chances that happen go up dramatically. And that's what I want to see you do. I want you to be able to live your life, the triple P life, right? About empowering your dreams, igniting your passion, accelerating your prosperity. You can't do that if you're not well. Can't do that if you're toxic. Can't do that if you live in a toxic environment. So that wraps up our episode on EDCs. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I hope it, even though it was a bit overwhelming, that you felt some level of hope that there's things that you can do to change these processes and to really make a difference for you and your family moving forward. So, guys, I always say, you be you, just be the best you, and I promise you will always empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate your prosperity. Until next week, for sure, be well.